Hello, this is a new thing that we're going to try. We're going to try to keep up with the times, and we're also going to try to just sort of enrich the general experience of our little tiny corner of the internet by going content rich, image rich, by going auditory rather than typological, to borrow the overwrought terminology of certain Professor McLuhan, who we'll be discussing a bit later in the video, in the capacities that we would normally be writing typologically about. We're going to try a new thing. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to make an iPhone video of that talking about action, and we're going to post it to our blog, which I guess that makes this vlogging. This is a vlog. I vlogged. I'm a vlogger. These are words that I only know in my capacity as a perfectly average tournament Scrabble player. Great way to get the V and the G off of your rack when you're in a pinch. But we're actually going to live out, execute those actions presently. And the reason, there are several reasons why we're trying this, in spite of, as you can probably already gather, all sorts of personal idiosyncrasies and worldviews and opinions that militate against any such thing. In spite of all of that, I checked out a lot of Marshall McLuhan over the summer, and I also just sort of live in the world and I notice stuff. And, he said a lot of pretty wild stuff, but you do see this general tendency towards visual and auditory and away from typographical. And, I'm not above trying to keep up with the times. I'm also not above trying to, I guess one way to put it is stay young, which I was never a good young person. I only make sense as an old curmudgeon-y bastard. As anyone who's read even a paragraph of what I've written on the blog probably already knows. But there is something to be said for not allowing yourself to age socially any more than you have to. It's not completely avoidable, but it's partially avoidable. So we're going to attempt to keep up with the times just a little tiny bit by making a video. And I guess thanks for watching, and I'm so sorry that you're watching this. I should also say that I'm not above leaving a record of myself all over the internet, which I've already kind of done, but I haven't done it in this format. In fact, I don't know if there's any actual video of me talking on the whole internet, which is perfectly okay. I'm not super into the idea that everyone needs to be featured on the internet in their capacity as a talker. Certainly I don't, but I'm not above stooping to that level. So here I am, all the way down there with all my hair, which will be gone soon. Believe it or not, there is an impending return to employment for a certain employer who shall not be named, who doesn't really approve of stuff like this. It's just really not approvable or approved of in that context, which is what it is. So this is what will be gone soon, and I figured I would try to get the first one of these up before all of that scruff disappears, which is to say that I am also not above engineering my appearance to a certain degree in order to give off certain impressions to certain people. Now, in this case, this was more going with the flow. I think I had the same idea that a lot of dudes had when the world basically ended 18 months ago, which was to really lean into the Castaway apocalyptic end times sort of vibe, and just not cut any hair for as long as possible. That's what we've done, and this is what it looks like. It will all be gone soon, with any luck. So this is the last little taste of that, and it's going all over the internet. Aren't we happy about that? One last life update before we get into the legit business of this video. it's been hard not to think about, making some pretty drastic changes during these last 18 months and everything that's happened. It's certainly not the best time or the best situation to make binding, life-changing decisions, as in any overly emotional state that you might be in. It's always better to wait and think through everything. Have to admit, though, that I'm kind of obsessed with the idea of becoming a farmer now, which is totally absurd because I don't know how to grow anything. I don't know how to take care of anything or anyone. I don't have any money, and I don't know even how to get a farm or where farms are or how that even works. But there's always been this issue of trying to live in harmony with your own principles, and I've always found this incredibly, incredibly challenging. In other words, impossible to do while living in the environments that, in every other respect, I'm very much at peace with and gravitate towards, meaning, the big urban environments, the places where ideas have sex, arts have sex, etc. Occasionally people have sex, but not as much as people would like, of course. Not that that will be any better on the farm, but that is just another thing maybe to look into before jumping into that whole mess. In any case, I play this game in my head, game of chess, if you will, trying to sort of triangulate my way to ways that I might live in better harmony with my own principles. And there just aren't really too many solutions that I've thought of, really none. And frankly, I think becoming a farmer might actually be a pretty solid solution to that specific problem. Now, whether something so drastic is justified even by that sort of like deeply held need to do something about stuff, who knows? But I definitely didn't like the way things were going in general in the world already, and as has become sort of a played out trope on the news, the pandemic sort of has accelerated a lot of things that were already in motion. And whether that's really allowing us to, sort of see the future in a clairvoyant way, I don't know that that's really the case. But if it is, then I'm only more, more discouraged, honestly, about everything. And I think that being as self-sufficient as possible and growing food, that just makes a lot of sense. That seems to me like a nice way to bring myself into better harmony with everything. But, I just don't know if that's going to be possible. It's been a thought, and I want to offer it in video format because I don't feel like the typographical format really does justice to that particular thought. So that was one brief life update I wanted to share. Readers of the blog know that I don't like to do life updates so much because I don't think anyone really cares. But, as was mentioned earlier, the world's just, things change, culture changes, people evolve. The internet evolves. Maybe I should do the life updating in video format, and then I can completely break with it in typographical format. I'm going to give that some more thought. There really aren't any other life updates to share other than that, which isn't even an update. It's just a, pie in the sky thought, but it's a persistent thought. Okay, so a funny thing happened to me a couple weeks ago. I was walking from my apartment in the Echo Park-ish area of LA through downtown over Bunker Hill to the Central Library, which is my church, such as it is, and is, since I think middle of the summer, back open. I started venturing out there for the first time in quite a while to dig up some rare books that you can't take out of the library so that I can write typographical dreck about them and plaster it all over the internet. And, all that being as it is, you also you just see stuff, you see things and people and stuff when you take a walk through that particular part of the world. And a couple of them really stood out. One in particular that I want to get into. There was a gentleman, maybe in his late 20s or early 30s, on the Bunker Hill steps wearing a black hoodie with some sort of logo on the back that I couldn't make out. But I could make out that underneath the logo in very large readable letters, it said failure. This I find obviously worth thinking about. And I realize that in the world at large, that means overthinking to many people. Thinking too hard, overthinking, making too much out of something. I don't know how possible it is to make too much out of a gesture like that. I suppose if you could actually talk to the person and really feel them out, and maybe if you came to the conclusion that way that there's something about them, a context, in the context of them, that this makes some kind of sense that it doesn't make otherwise. Failing that, I find this very interesting, particularly because there's a passage in McLuhan. I mean, many of them if you want to go that way, but one in particular that I thought of immediately when I saw this. This is page 82 of Understanding Media, for those of you keeping score at home, as the saying goes. Quote, suppose that, instead of displaying the stars and stripes, we were to write the words American flag across a piece of cloth and to display that. To translate the rich visual mosaic into written form would be to deprive it of most of its qualities of corporate image and experience. Which is very true. And of course suggests the ultimate hipster maneuver for those of us who are certainly not exactly on Team America, but also value certain cherry-picked aspects of the American thing. Would definitely make a lot of sense to procure or create said piece of cloth with the words American flag written on it in lieu of the rich visual mosaic of the stars and stripes. We'll have to leave that project for another time. But I do think McLuhan is onto something with this, obviously, that, visually, symbolically, he extends this to include, auditorially, etc. These things can grab you in an instant when they're presented in rich color and symbolism, and with all the associations, literal and non-literal, direct and indirect, that the flag has for all kinds of people. There's certainly a different effect. And when you use words rather than that image, you could argue there are things that are gained. I think there are definitely things that are gained. Some of these things are, addition by subtraction kind of gains, but you certainly also lose a lot, at least in terms of what you're able to communicate in an instant. I think if you have, a book a week for a year, which is sort of my personal, the way I get started on really trying to dive into a subject that I want to learn a lot about. 50 books. If you read 50 books on American history, you're going to have communicated to you by those authors quite a rich quality of corporate image and experience that way. It'll take you a year to do it, whereas the flag, the image can present, at least in terms of what you've already internalized, it can present all that to you, conjure it for you in an instant. Seems to me that that's one, the aspect of being concise versus being verbose is perhaps a tiny crack in the logic of this passage, but it's not a fatal one. And I think it's very relevant to consider in light of this hoodie that said failure on the back of it. Now, why would somebody want proactively to perform this maneuver of reducing an image to typography, and displaying it in lieu of the image? Well, the answer to that from the overthinking department of things is actually fairly obvious, which is that the actual image of failure, whether or not you believe in the way that that's defined by any given society or social group, the actual image of failure, an authentic failure who looks like a failure and will be understood that way by other people looking at the person, that image is, you can't buy it, you can't order it on the internet, whereas you can order a sweatshirt on the internet. And obviously, this gentleman had bought the sweatshirt, and he paired it with an immaculate haircut, chiseled stubble on his face, some very nice pants and shoes, nicer than certainly I was wearing at the particular time that I spotted him, which of course makes you wonder if he's actually a failure and by whose standards he is or is not one. Just a gut feeling, he looked more like a success than a failure in terms of the quality of corporate image of the full package of him. But he was wearing a shirt that said failure, analogous to this hypothetical flag that says American flag, reducing the failure image to a word and displaying that. So, in other words, and I'm going to drop the H word, even though it's overused and I hate it, but it's relevant here. The sort of central hipster maneuver to, by saying you're nothing, you're actually saying you're everything, which is the way it was put in one interview that I posted something about on the blog about 6 months ago. From that department, this is a way to say very concisely, just like American flag is very concise, to say very concisely, I'm nothing, therein claiming that you're everything. In this case, the loss and the reduction to a very concise statement is actually a gain. It's a loss of the flag, but it's a gain for this gentleman, which I find rather interesting to think about, because it is specifically the way that he's able to access the central maneuver of hipsterism without actually failing in the sort of genteel sense of that. And of course, this I find personally very hard to relate to in terms of the dishonesty of it. I personally think that's what it is. I think that if you want to fail, you should fail. If you're on Team America, you should vote. And I know people that are on Team America that don't vote, which is, I don't even know where to go with that. And I'm not going to try to tell them who to vote for. It's just rather interesting that that's possible for people. Similarly, in continuing to overthink all of this, I've also had to realize that I do happen to be someone who doesn't particularly believe in the way that success is defined by the genteel mainstream of the society and the culture that I live in, generally speaking. And therefore, while I have a very difficult time making peace with things like coloring hair and dressing up as movie characters, and hipstering generally, I have plenty of old torn clothes, and it's because I've worn them for 15 years. I have, some old security clothes that I wear because they're comfortable, and I feel okay about that because I actually have worked as a security guard for years at a time in previous points in my life. So I feel like I've earned just a smidgen of credibility in terms of wearing, things that could be taken, again, to someone who doesn't know my life story, it could be taken as a hipstery sort of thing. Regarding the success and failure thing, I realized that because I don't always agree with the way success is defined, I actually can, in a small way, relate to the need to broadcast the construct failure to my social surroundings. Let's be honest, I don't have to try that hard because I've made at least some decisions to sort of, live with the consequences and live that idea out. Not with 100% consistency, but with enough consistency and enough psychological consistency that when someone sees me on the street and thinks failure, I think I've probably earned that. It's probably because I've earned it, and I'm fine with that for reasons I've already said too much about. So by putting this word on a shirt, this gentleman has, oddly enough, he's reclaimed this poverty of typographical thought. He's reclaimed it as a way to actually distill the essence of his message to the social surroundings he's in, which is, God, it's fucking annoying that that's possible to do, but he's done it. And I think Professor McLuhan would have a field day with the typographical hipster, as I have attempted to lay out here. A couple other random things, not quite as interesting to me personally, but definitely in the same department. I saw a college-age kid on a scooter with a Jeff Koons shirt. I think Jeff Koons is an artist of some kind, like a big shit artist. I forget what exactly he does. But the fact that I, in that condition, noticed, recognized, remember that this happened, I think is probably exactly the point of that shirt, which once again reduces a career, a bunch of artworks. It reduces a whole art industrial complex and a whole sort of cultural affiliation, reduces it to 2 words on a shirt. Which similarly is like, it's a really bizarre reversal of what for McLuhan in this passage is a loss becomes a gain for this gentleman. Which is really impressive and annoying also at the same time. I also saw, to wrap up here, I saw a high school kid. There's a high school on the way on this walk. Also saw a high school kid with a knit cap. I think we just called them a winter hat where I grew up, but now it's not a winter hat. It's just another outfit component. A knit hat with a Duff Beer logo, and this was the visual image. This was all the rich qualities of corporate image and experience of Duff Beer were present, I suppose, because it was the Duff Beer logo. It didn't just say Duff Beer Simpsons Television in like plain text. It was a Duff Beer knit cap. I pretty much don't watch TV shows anymore except for sports, but I was really, my friends and I were really enamored of The Simpsons, really into it, for a long time. And as we got older, also certainly in on some of the commentary. And I've sort of outgrown that kind of commentary, but there's definitely still a soft spot in my heart for that show and shows like it. I've seen snippets of some of the newer animated stuff that's, really, nothing will ever top The Simpsons for me, just because that's how we are when we are reared on something. But some of the new shows are really, really quite good in the same vein, I think, just based on what I've seen of them. All that said, I'm not sure that we then or now Certainly not now, but I'm not even sure then if we would have thought this cap was actually cool. I tend to think it's very uncool. And there's a super literal stupid reason, which is that, you know, the hat was too clean. It looked brand new. It had not ever been worn to a dive bar, never been vomited on, never been left behind and retrieved the next morning. You know, as you're hungover and you've left your hat in one bar, your purse in the other bar, and parked your car on the other side. This actually happened to me once. I spent a whole Saturday in Greeley, Colorado, helping one of my roommates in Lawrenson Hall retrieve his entire worldly possessions, like wallet, keys, car, everything from, like, you know, six objects in 6 different, like, houses and bars and parts of Greeley. It was a terrible day. You know, I don't think we found it. I don't know what ever came of all that, because I don't think we found everything. I think there was some pretty important stuff that we never located. Maybe he located it later and I didn't know about it. But in any case, it was a terrible day. I felt terrible for him, and now it's like kind of a fond, funny memory, story I enjoy telling. But that Duff beer hat had never been through something like that. And certainly this 15-year-old, I mean, let's just hope this 15-year-old had not yet. Let's hope that she does go through it at a certain point when she's almost ready for it, but not quite. That would be the ideal time for her to put herself into that situation and have to clean up after it. I feel like she's probably not yet had to deal with anything quite like that. And for that reason, the cleanliness and the neatness of the hat itself, I found very contrary to, you know, Barney having the Duff beer attached to his veins or whatever, you know, and all the belching and things that happened. So there was like a surface level dissonance that, you know, only an insider would maybe notice. But even beyond that, you know, when you take that image out of what that show was, I don't know if it is that, but what it was, you take the image out of that context, I'm not sure that it is cool anymore. I think it maybe is just sort of silly. That's what I think. But I'm an old, bitter bastard, and I have been since I was 13 years old. We're going to wrap up on that note. I will be getting another one of these up in the next couple weeks. It's going to be a doozy, so look out for that one. Expect a lot less scruff. Expect maybe 10% more comfort on my side with this new format, but don't expect anything resembling, you know, professional podcasting or professorial talents. We're going to try to maybe, over the course of many of these, maybe we'll improve a tiny bit to where it's not unbearable. But until the next one, thanks for watching. I'm so sorry you watched this, and we will see you next time.